So tonight, I want to talk a little bit about some PQs and kind of go over the stats. And like, we obviously did not see anything from FFG in a way of a ban in the last 2 weeks. Alex, do you think we will be getting a ban anytime soon on any cards or leaders?
Judging by the last PQ weekend, probably not. But there's always room for them to do whatever.
Yeah. If they do ban, let's just pretend they do ban Force Throw and they leave Hantu alone, right? How do you think that changes the meta? Does more Tarkentown decks creep up? Is that like the bigger thing? Like what do you think that would look like?
If like ban Force Throw,
Yeah. Just Force Throw.
maybe a little bit of a reduction in other leaders playing like, Red Green Kid Fisto or something like that. I don't know. I Force Throw to me was always super inconsequential. I know you hate it. So I'm just like, I never really cared when people force through me or themselves to kill something. So I'm not sure. Like I don't really build decks around Force Throw. I know it's kind of a
Red's
non-answer. I just don't really like.
Yeah,
doesn't really affect me one way or another, I guess.
You and your non-answers. Yeah, so I don't know, like, if we look at, we're going to look at the meta from this weekend, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that, because they did release like a schedule for August, and like my belief is if they aren't going to ban it now, they're probably not going to ban it in a month. They're going to let it play out for the whole season. So to begin with, we kind of look at some of the PQ winners. So we have Quinlan up there, a Boba Data Vault. Look at that, Alex's favorite. Cad Bane, Tarkentown. We had an Iden Data Vault. The New York one, I have no idea. I don't know what that one is. A Sabine ECL. Kylo Tarkentown, of course, that's what's his face from X-Wing. What's that guy's name? Andrew Cox.
Oh.
That's who that is. That's who took that down. That's the area in Florida he goes to, I think.
I mean, he won one in set one, right? Didn't he win like the big PQ or something, or a 1K or whatever? Because they didn't have PQs back then.
Yes. Yeah. We have Sabine Tarkentown. Like, that was a little bit of a surprise. That's kind of cool. We are going to cover that list tonight because I was like, all right, let's look at that list because it's been a while since we've done that. Another Boba. We see a Kaz kind of cropping up here. Another Quinlan, one Han, and a Gar Saxon ECL. So if we actually look at like the archetypes, I think like that's the biggest thing is Han Solo still wins triumphant on the archetypes, but his conversion rate is a lot lower, right? So for example, he has over 700 people have taken his deck somewhere, and that's going to be the combination of blue and green, folks, just so you know. So like that's why the number's a little bit higher. I did not want to break it out any farther than that. But for instance, it's not converting as well as Mother Talzin decks are converting, or as Kylo Ren decks are converting, which is a little surprising, other than the Kylo Ren is kind of designed a little bit to, beat that down. So I don't know. So that's these are some of the top decks. As you can see, Cad Bane has a really high conversion rate. I don't know if that's surprising, but I think like it's like the deck that doesn't care as much about Force Throw as other decks do, because they play a lot of cards they can recur for themselves. They play a lot of capture type stuff, so I don't know if they care as much about Force Throw in that deck. But that's surprising. The Cad Bane having a higher conversion rate seems pretty surprising to me. And then you kind of look at Quinlan, Anakin, all down. Boba creeping up there. Probably Boba Data Vault has the official highest conversion rate in this set of numbers. So out of the top 10, you should be looking at Boba Data Vault, and you should be looking at Cad Bane, I guess, because those seem to be the highest converting ones. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, of these like top 10 decks, I'm sure there's other decks that, one of them won the one of the PQs over there. I think like Iden, you should probably also watch out for. I'm sure that's on the rise there. But I mean, I always thought that Boba Data Vault was a pretty good deck. It did take down a couple PQs late last set, and it's now early this set. And that doesn't, with a lot of more force things out there, the average base health, I'm sure, went down, so it might be a lot easier for indirect damage to do things. Although you can also spam out a lot more units pretty quickly, but also, like, Han probably doesn't want to damage his own units with indirect, because he just played them. They have 2 less health, so it's a fun deck. I enjoy it. I don't play it a lot, but it is very annoying to go against. So
yeah, it's one of those decks that like was doing well into like the Kiras and to like some of those other control decks because it can just push out the damage. I wish Pelp was like that too. You know, maybe we'll get a good Pelp next set. I don't know. We'll see. If we kind of look at the archetypes, this is just going to compare last week versus this week. Kylo Ren Tarkin Town's meta share is off the charts again, but its win rate is down. So I think that's a very interesting statistic, right? Like you talked about Iden Data Vault. Iden Data Vault's win rate is up pretty high. Its conversion rate is pretty high. And its meta share is going up comparatively, right? So I think you're correct, and yes, it's not up in those top 10, but look at the performance rate that it had this weekend. Another one is Yoda aggression, right? Like that's not super surprising, but like look at that. That's like that conversion rate's up over 50%. The win rate's going up. That's another deck I think people should be looking out for.
It's a fun
I
deck.
don't find it fun to play. I hate it. I don't like it.
I like Yoda. I played Yoda a lot in set 3, a little bit less last set, but I have a Yoda red deck and it's fun. I like Rey. Just basically ruthless raying your opponent every turn is pretty cool. And I also needed, I pulled a serialized Bendu, so I needed a deck to put Bendu in, so I made red Yoda. And I just have Bendu in there because he's also a giant threat that you can drop early with, like, You're My Only Hope. Or Force Throw yourself for 8 damage, which is a lot.
Yep. Another
Also,
deck on the right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say he's also shockingly good in the space aggro because he also hits space units. Does 3 damage all space units. He's a bombing run for both fields when he attacks.
Yeah. Well, if that space deck hasn't won by the time you get Bendu out and they're not running ramp,
You
I
can
think
get Bendu out on
at that
6
point,
resources, right? With You're My Only Hope, so...
Oh, okay. All right. Well, fine.
If you have enough Restore and Sentinel in the deck, you're okay.
But yeah, I think the other the big noticeable thing is Kaz pilot, but not the one I would have thought. Like Kaz yellow, right? Like what?
Gross.
Why is Kaz yellow coming up? I don't want to see that. That's you're gonna play Cunning for 4 again, I guess.
I had a local who played a lot of Kaz yellow last set, and it can get pretty annoying. I don't think that's the right color. I still believe in blue, but it can get annoying.
Yeah, I'm not super into that personally, but you can. So these are kind of like the numbers. You could check out the Sue Stats page if you want, like, to dive into these numbers. I like I said, I think the most interesting thing is that Kylo Ren is going up in meta share, but is not like performing as well as we thought it would comparative to the weekend before, and I think that's because you got more people trying it out, right? So more people equals
Mother
more
Talzin's
losing.
Meta share is like 9.6, which is the highest on this graphic here. That win rate is 52%, right?
Yeah.
The conversion's 27, so that's not good comparatively.
No, that's not. That's definitely not very good. But just ignore the Palpatine Tarkin Town, though, please. Like,
why?
Just everybody ignore that. Nope, ignore that. That's
Such
the one
so
deck.
Fun.
One person ran that deck, and you want to know who it was? It was Crispy. So
I was gonna say
that's who
Crispy.
ran that deck. Yes, and it was at Gen Con after he already had won one of the days for Gen Con. So that was his second backup deck, I think, to play.
I can respect it. Like, he made a solid one in set 3, right? Or was it? Yeah, it was in the middle of set 3.
I think it was set 3. Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah, so the Boba Data Vault, that's the other one. Like you can see the meta share is going up, but it's a little bit lower, but the conversion rate and win rate are pretty high. So I would be careful. Again, we looking at some of these numbers, you don't want to just like go, oh, well, that one looks really good. Well, you have to really take kind of like the top 10 decks, archetypes, and then kind of come down here, look at these, and you have to be a little bit more careful for it. So that way you don't just pick something and go, oh, well, that's an auto win, because I don't think that's how SWU works right now. I will say that the meta feels very diverse comparatively. Seeing some of those Kaz's up there, having the Han 4s in there, having some Vaders still, seeing a little bit of Thrawn. It's pretty good. I won't lie and tell you I have been practicing Thrawn ECL a little bit just because it's fun. Like, I just really like Thrawn a lot. Thrawn's one of my favorite characters ever, so like it's kind of hard for me not to want to. We've also started playtesting Thrawn 1 again, and then I just kind of told them, why are we playing this when we could just play Trench? Like, it's like, sorry, like I think Trench just is a little bit better. Like, yeah, it's cool to see their card, but
not to be like super biased towards Trench, but like Trench is a better blue-yellow villainy control deck than Set 1 Thrawn.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to explain to people, but you know,
it also doesn't lose to other control decks by design. So in a mirror matchup,
yeah,
God help you, but mirror matchup, you're probably okay.
Yeah, you're very rarely going to face another Trench. Maybe
yeah, well,
a Trench
like
green.
mirror matchup being like a hard control matchup,
oh, okay,
like an Iden blue or something like that, or more so than you and me happen to play each other in the same tournament.
Yeah. So now we kind of move on to like these are kind of the tier rankings they gave based on win percentage. I did the win percentage for now while he still works some of that other stuff out. So Kylo Win is still ranked up there because of win percentage. I think that will change next week, but we'll see. Iden coming in with a heavy share. Luke, Hero of Yavin Data Vault baby, is up there. Look at that. I don't know. I like seeing the Luke up there. I don't like facing that Luke, though. I'll tell you that right now. It's not a fun deck to have to play against.
It's fine. It's just the worst version of my Von Reg deck. It's okay.
Yeah. Thrawn yellow. There's the Boba again, and then Pelp blue pushing up into that upper-esque tier. Right. That seems pretty
back to back.
Pretty good. Too. I know. The next one, yep, tier 2 Pelp again. Yoda, more Kylo, more Han.
Yeah, you appreciate that Han Blue Force is a tier 2, middle of the road tier 2 deck.
Yes, I do. I do, and I think that's like kind of like where I want to like move the discussion right now, is because people were very afraid of Han 2 Blue. It did very well in testing. The question I have, Alex, is it seeing less of a win percentage because so many people were running it? That when you run into the mirrors, you're knocking yourself down the ranking system just by pure sheer volume? Or do you think it's because enough people just teched against it that it was easy enough to tech against that it started to lose its meta share because of the fact that we're now saying, oh, hey, hold on a second, I'm just going to run these 3 extra cards to, you know, kind of give you the middle finger. So what do you think for that?
It's a little bit of a combo of both, right? Like, obviously, cannibalizing yourself will lower your win percentage. And I feel like it's a coin flip on who wins those matches anyways. Like, just super 50-50 on those. But also, like, if, you know, people were very adamant that this is going to be the best deck, so everyone was just like, what do you do for this? Kind of like, you know, in Set 1 with Sabine, where everyone's just like, well, this is probably the best deck. What do I have answers for Sabine? It's just as long as you have some sort of game plan against the deck that's that popular, then that deck starts kind of faltering unless it's like super busted. But I don't think it's super busted. So it's just, you know, a little bit of everyone's mentally prepared and has a game plan for how they're going to play against Han, and a little bit of, well, basically everyone's trying to play this deck and they're cannibalizing each other. Because like that meta percentage here is 16%. which I think is the only one in like double digits, let alone
Double
above
digits.
like 5%, right? Like nothing's even close.
Yeah.
I don't even see any being higher than 2%. Well, I lied.
Yeah, there's a couple in there.
There's the Sabine that's at 4%, but nothing's even close. Like nothing's above 5% there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think like that's a good analysis, right? That's a good observation, and I think like because these statistics take into account obviously basically since the beginning of July, like, and so like I think that's like when we talk about how the meta shifts and everything ebbs and flows, right? This is actually just a snapshot of overall, right? Like we could go up top, we go back up, we could see Han not converting in the same way, right? Except for Han Solo data vault, I guess. I guess that one's converting. But like it's not converting in the same way, that it was before. Its meta share is going down. Which I think is good then, right? Because if its meta share goes down, logically it'll bring some of the stronger players on that deck up, and like you won't have to tech against it in the same way that we had to before. I think it's also interesting to kind of note like Palpatine being on the rise, probably as a correlation to Mother Talzin and Han 2 decks being so prevalent. It's easy to play that against them.
Yeah, Palpatine feasts on like mid-range decks like that. Mid-range decks that don't have a particularly strong end game. Like Talzin has some, right? Like that's why the Sun is in the deck. Is to give it a little bit better end game, but that end game, the Sun is not a crazy end game when you're playing like Devastators.
Exactly.
Right, so it's Palpatine.
Oh, you played the Sun? Ooh.
Yeah. Watch him go boom. He's now a crater in the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the more mid range, less aggro, the better Palpatine gets, right? And obviously vice versa. Unless you're playing Dark and Down, which is fine.
Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting to see if Kylo continues to go down after this weekend. Like, so if in a weekend, is Kylo going to continue to go down? Like, I think Kylo does very well against like those Han mid-range decks. I think that it specifically works very well against them. I don't think it works as well against control decks, though. And maybe this is just me being biased. I guess, like, on one side, I want more people to run Kylo, because if you're running Kylo Talzin and that, I could just start running Pelp again. Like, I could just go back to my Pelp days and just, like, I could just be happy again. Like, I made top 8 in a PQ with Pelp before. I can happily play Pelp again. Though this time it'll probably not be yellow, because it's fun this set. But I think that's, like, the bigger question is, like, I don't know. We have to look at, like, I don't know. I'm trying to convince the guy for this site to figure out how we can get, like, aggro versus mid-range versus tempo deck type, like, analysis. So, like, we could trend where, like, those go. Because I think, like, if you see the weekend before, aggro go from, like, 5% to, like, 28%, right? Like, that's a huge jump. That's very predictive of what you should be looking at for the meta. So, like, the next weekend, you don't immediately bring Palpatine. If everybody's running aggro, it's Palpatine's not super awesome into aggro. Just run Trench, Just kidding. Don't do that.
That's our answer to everything. It's just run Trench, but yeah. Some of it's true, some of it's not.
So I think that's like that would be, to me, that would be interesting, but because of all these mid-range things cropping up, we're now seeing, like, you could see Palpatine rise. Like, Palpatine had a good showing, in my opinion, at Worlds Galactics this year, right? And I think that it could, like, I think, like, Quinlan is not always the fastest aggro, right? Like, so if you can beat down some of this Vader and Han and Kaz, then, like, let's bring back the Palpatines, baby. Like, let's just make this a control only meta. I do a lot better against control decks because I know how to play against control decks a lot easier. So it's a lot more fun.
How many people would hate playing into control meta?
A lot of people. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're wrong, but also so many people would hate that. I love control metas,
like,
but I understand
like,
why they're
think
not
about
for
it.
everyone. People want to play the game for
Think
some
about it.
reason.
Yeah, like you run a control meta. It's like, who's gonna flip their Palpatine first, because you know you're wrong every time.
Who draws
Do not flip
vigilance
your
first,
Palpatine.
baby?
Which that also has, like, it's the same thing as, like, I've harped on the Force throw. Like, I would not want to run into a million people just all playing very close, identical control decks where vigilance is like the one card you need to win the game, and whoever sees it first wins the game. I hate that. Like, those are not fun metas, and that's why I'm still pretty opposed to the Force throw and would like to just see it banned. But at the same token, like, right now, I don't feel like the meta is so harsh, and I think they are worried. In my opinion, they should be a little bit worried. If you ban Force throw, your control could get a bigger share. Like, it becomes a little bit more pushing in there. Because if you have one less card to make me discard cards, like, now you have to run Pillage, which is not as effective of a card compared to Force Throw. So
And you're really widening the gap between, like, the versatility of Force decks versus the versatility of non-Force decks.
Yes. And so I don't think we'll see it, but I still do not like the Force throw meta, and if it goes away, like, I just feel I could just I'll just be back on control. I probably am going to be back on control anyway, just because it's more my style, I think. Though I have that fancy Vader showcase, so
the wild thing, right? If you look at, I think there's like 17 decks here, tier 1 and tier 2. Not as many of them as you'd expect would be, like, running Force throw. Because it's like, out of the top 6 tier 1 decks, it's like just Kylo's running Force throw, right? I mean, maybe they're running it in Pilot Luke, but I don't feel like they are.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I doubt it, but I guess I haven't looked at the latest, Pilot Luke decks. So it's like, it's just like Kylo, and then it's just like Yoda, Han, Quinlan, Anakin, and then the other Kylo set 2 Kylo. Right? So that's not nearly as much as you'd expect to be, like, that rampant. Granted, the number is, 700 something Han decks, so you will see it a lot more, but they aren't, like, the most top performing decks are the ones just crushing it, just by, like, 50% or whatever the deck's running in the top cut at Worlds.
Yeah. And so I think while we, while I feel that the mechanic is undercosted and priced incorrectly as a card in this meta, now with this new set, I do think that, like, the question I have, right, I guess, is if I feel it is undercosted, if you pull it away, will we see, like, such a big decrease in Force type decks? I don't know if we will. I don't, like, which also then lends the argument that, well, if you pull it away and you still see a lot of Force decks be popular and do well, is Force throw really that big of a deal? Like, that's kind of the conundrum you run into. Like, if it's a big deal and it ruins all the Force decks, then that means they fucked up on how they built the Force and all of that.
Yeah,
and on the opposite side, though,
I was going to say, yeah, if they ban it and all the other Force decks are still fine, that means they designed a really good set, not based around one card.
Yes, exactly. And that's, I would like to see it banned to test that out. I do think Han 2 loses some of its meta share, like farther, if they ban Force throw, because I think that in that specific deck, it's just too prevalent of a stupid card in that deck that because you can Force throw yourself and it doesn't cost you anything, really.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint with Force throw, is that you can do it to yourself, which your opponent can't play around other than, like, killing all your Force units, right? That's the one thing. It's like, I have that issue with, like, why am I blanking on that name? Cause, right? That's the same issue. It's like, well, I can't control how many, like, hero cards you have in your deck, right? And I can't prevent this damage in any way, shape, or form, outside of, like, close the shield gates, which no one ever runs. So it's like, well, this is just straight up unblockable something. Like, I literally can't respond to it. That's my main issue for, like, those kind of cards. that kind of style of card. It's like, well, I literally can't do anything. Like I can't account for something like this happening.
Yeah, and I think that's like the big thing. Like that's a big thing with that force throw. And like I think if you get rid of force throw, I mean, I think if they just redesigned it or whatever or rotted it, like we would be better off. Like you can't, you could put like a limit on what it is, right? Like if you force throw yourself, like before it wasn't a big deal, but I mean, Han has the ability to draw cards. Like in fairness though, just so you know, it's not just key. We saw this last set with Mon Mothma. I ran a deck that allowed me to draw an insane amount of cards. It's definitely something that does exist. Yeah. And like, so I don't think it's just solely this set, you know, force throw. It's just the problem is people made it active. So I'm still advocating they ban force throw and see where the meta shakes out. They can always unban it if like it kills everything. I don't want to ban Hantu though. I think at this point that's a poor move. I think
that's wild. That seems so
at this point it's demonstrated he's not good enough that you would need to, which is funny because he was not super like amazingly overpowered in all these other sets, right? Like
he disappeared for 2 of them.
Like, yeah, you know, like, and we found it's funny because I think that's why Cad Bane is coming back up in the Rise is because Cad Bane beats out these fucking Han decks like nobody's business. He has good game into Han. There you go. I don't care what anyone says. Cad Bane is favored in a Hantu blue matchup. Just very, very much so.